Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to How to Craft a Winning Submission for the ULI Asia Pacific Awards for Excellence 2026. I'm Rose Hang, Director of Programs and Thought Leadership at ULI Asia Pacific, and I'm delighted to be your host today. The ULI Awards for Excellence have a long-standing legacy for recognizing outstanding real estate projects and programs that demonstrate excellence across the full development cycle, from planning and delivery to performance, impact, and long-term value. We are proud that ULI Asia Pacific is hosting the program's seventh edition in the region. We are thrilled to be joined today by our 2026 awards jury chair, Belinda Bentley, Managing Director of Nine Springs, and Chris Law, Founding Director of the Oval Partnership. Both have served as long-standing jury chairs for their awards, and we are pleased to welcome them to share their extensive experience behind the scenes insights today. So today's program will begin with an overview of the awards legacy and how the process works, followed by a fireside chat with Belinda and Chris on how to craft a winning submission. So when it's time for your questions, just type them into the Q&A box. I will make sure to pass them on to our jury chair. So next slide, Kenil. So for anyone new to ULI, we are the world's largest and oldest global real estate association, founded in 1936. Our mission is to shape the future of the built environment for transformative impact and communities worldwide, across Asia Pacific and around the globe. Our members work together to drive better cities, better development, and better outcomes for people. Next. Here in Asia Pacific, ULI brings together a 3,000 strong network across Australia, as well as China, Hong Kong, India, Japan, and Philippines, Singapore, and South Korea. It's a truly regional communities working across borders to advance better cities and better built environment outcomes. Next. Our membership in Asia Pacific spans the full spectrum of the built environment, including developers, investors, planners, architects, public sector leaders, academics, and emerging professionals. It's a truly multidisciplinary and cross-market community that brings a wide range of perspectives to every conversation. Next. Since 1979, ULI Awards for Excellence honor outstanding projects globally, recognizing best practices across design, delivery, impact, and programs. Our Asia Pacific edition proudly continues this tradition. While America's awards enter its 48th year, we're heading into our 7th year in 2026. Next. Over the past 10 years, there have been 1,500 global entries to the award, with more than 600 from Asia Pacific. Each year, submissions comes from 20 to 30 countries, underscoring the award's global prestige and recognition. Next. So coming back to Asia Pacific Awards for Excellence and how the jury evaluates projects, it is helpful to think about the process in two layers. The first layer is the eligibility gateway. There are the baseline requirements to be recognized, considered at all. Projects must be financially viable, operationally stabilized, and substantially complete. Typically, that means at least a year of operation, although the jury recognizes flexibility for public, nonprofit, or highly innovative projects. These criteria are about readiness. They are entry conditions, not what differentiate winners. The second layer is where projects truly stand out. This is where the jury looks for excellence. They assess how distinctive and innovative the project is, how well it integrates design, delivery, economics, and management, and the depth of the community impact. They also closely looking into sustainability, resilience, and adaptability over time, as well as whether elements of the projects can be replicated elsewhere. Importantly, projects are assessed on merit, not size or budget. What matters most is how clearly the project demonstrates ULI values and respond to current and future community needs. Next. For the award judging process, first a quick word on the jury itself. The awards are judged by a panel of ULI full members who are senior industry leaders across finance, development, planning, design, and public affairs. In terms of the process, judging happens in 3 stages. The first jury meeting takes place after submissions closes. Jurors review projects to advance and then meet over a full day to debate and assess entries, resulting in a list of finalists. The second stage is finalist site visits. Jurors visit projects in person or virtually where they need it to gain a deeper understanding of performance, impact, and operations. Finally, the jury reconvenes for a second meeting to make final decisions, selecting between, let's say, 5 to 10 awards winner who are then showcased at the Asia Pacific Summit. Next. So before we begin our fireside chat, I would like to take a moment to explain how we celebrate our award winners. Winners are recognized through a high-quality multimedia case presentation, with the project showcased at the 2026 ULI Asia Pacific Summit in Shanghai this year to a global audience. As you can see from the photos on the left, these presentations are a real highlight of the summit and a powerful way to share best practices across the region. Next. To enhance the visibility and educational value and long-term impact of the 2026 ULI Asia Pacific Awards for Excellence, we are extending recognition well beyond the announcement moment. So rather than seeing the awards as a one-off celebration, we are positioning winning projects as an ongoing learning platform for the broader ULI community. This means award-winning projects continue to live as a case studies, teaching tools, and sources for inspiration across the region. After winners are announced, we actively engage them through a range of initiatives. These include opportunity to participate in local council study tours, where members can experience project firsthand and hear directly from the teams behind them. Winners are also invited to share their insights through regional webinars, helping translate project outcomes into replicable lessons for other markets. In parallel, we amplify visibility through coordinated marketing, editorial features, and media outreach across ULI Asia Pacific platforms like Urban Land and Global Networks. Overall, the goal is simple: to ensure excellence is not just recognized, but shared, learned from, and scaled across Asia Pacific. Next. If you can, yeah. So the ULI Asia Pacific Awards for Excellence would not be possible without the tireless dedication of our jury. Our jury is geographically diverse and rotate every 3 years, ensuring fresh perspective with each award cycle. Jurors operate independently under ULI Code of Ethics with strict conflict of interest rules, meaning they cannot vote on or comment on projects connected to their own organizations. We would like to take a moment to acknowledge the 2026 award jury shown on the screen here. They represent industry leadership across finance, development, planning, design, and public affairs. We are deeply grateful for the time, expertise, and community commitment they are contributing to this year's awards. Next. In 2026, we are honored to have both of our jury chairs, Belinda Bentley and Chris Law, returning to lead this effort behind the scenes. And today we are especially thrilled to have both of them joining us for our fireside chat. Belinda and Chris, may I invite you to turn on your camera so we can see your bright and brilliant face and officially begin our conversation. So let's dive in.
Hello.
Hi. So maybe I'll go to Belinda first. So from a jury perspective, what distinguishes the ULI Awards for Excellence from other industry awards in the region, you think?
Thanks, Rose, and hi everyone. Thanks for joining today. There's a few points here. First and foremost, it's an award that is for the region, so Asia Pacific. So it's not country-based or a city-based award. I think for me, the one thing that's always been of interest is the fact that we award programs and projects. And that's also very special to be able to award programs that also play an important part in how we shape development and communities. And then the other thing as well, and Rose has already covered this, is about the fact that we look at it in a lens that is beyond architecture and design. And so Rose's point earlier is very important about ensuring that a project is settled, because I think that's the true test of excellence is whether or not how well a project is done is not purely based on its design, but actually how it operates in a market or in a community and that impact that it has, whether it be through sustainability, community impact, innovation. And so I do encourage often projects that may think, oh, well, we're 2 or 3 years in. And I'm like, well, actually, no, we're looking for projects that have been developed for 2 or 3 years to understand what is that impact that you've had. How does that sustainability look? Did you meet what you set out to do? How has it been accepted by the market is really important. And then I think also my favorite criteria, as a lot of my current and former jury members will know, is about the replicability and transferability of the project or the model. I think that's something where, as a region, while we are very different in terms of countries and cities, there are some very mutual challenges that we're facing. Housing crisis, sustainability, decarbonisation, resilience, technology, AI. And I think there's a lot of opportunities from these projects that we can share. So looking at innovation and looking at, are there themes or technologies or approaches from certain award winners that can then be replicated or transferred to future projects is something that I also love about the awards, and something that I often challenge my jury members on is about, well, how replicable is this? Because ideally we would like to celebrate awards that are projects, sorry, that where we can replicate them, and even if it's from a high level principles point of view as well. So I hope I've covered a few things. I might pass to Chris, because it's actually a really lovely question to start off with, and it is a fireside chat. So Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything else onto that. Thanks.
Yeah, Belinda, I totally agree with what you said. I think the award is very much a learning exercise, and therefore we are really looking for exemplar that other people can learn from, and therefore through that learning process, the final impact of the award should be to raise the quality of urban living all over Asia Pacific.
Mhm. Well, totally. A lot of points got covered, and then you both actually cover across like innovation, community impact, like operational sustainability, market acceptance, and all that. Like, what do you think? Which elements tend to be the articulated or insufficiently evidenced in the submission in general?
I think for any project, there are probably four aspects of it. The first one is the process. Yeah? So how was it done? Who were the stakeholders? The second one is the output, actually what get built. And the third aspect would be the outcome. Yeah? So I built this, but then I make a lot of money out of it. Yeah, that's the outcome. Yeah, or this project has employed 4,000 people. Yeah, but the longer term, I think earlier we talked about the longer term is the impact. Yeah? What is the long-term impact that that project has on for example, the local economy? Yeah, so it's not just how many people you have employed. What is the gross value add impact it has on the local economy. What is the improvement in the quality of life, whether there is any improvement in the quality of life or index, and so on. So usually we receive information on the output only. It would be great if we could have more information on the process. How was it done? Why was the process unusual and innovative? And then we definitely need a lot more information and evidence on the outcome. So the financial information, employment, carbon emission, those are the outcome. And I think ideally, if submission could include certain evidence of impact. Now, impact are notoriously difficult to directly measure. So sometimes if there is no quantitative measure of impact, you can articulate the impact. So there might not be numbers, but there might also be proxies that would help you articulate the impact. There are certain proxies that are indication of very strong impact. For example, if there is a lot of evidence of new inquiries for direct investment into that district, into that urban district. Now, that is not the number of the gross value add, but that is at least a good proxy, because there is a lot of inquiries from people who are interested in investing in the district. Some are opening new coffee shops, others are putting big money, others are NGO. If there are evidence of those inquiries, that would be a very, very good proxies for the impact of your project.
Well answered. I'm going to Bell to cover so after Chris talked about all this evidence need to provide. So where do submissions mostly fall short? And you think even when the project itself is strong, anything that submissions they tend to misunderstand in terms of criteria or category?
Yes. So I think it's a great question. I think that the first one to note is as you can see from the jury members, we are quite diverse as a group. So I'm not a design professional at all. So I don't always want to look at a set of plans, but there are some of my design colleague jury members that would love, a set of plans to look and understand, if you say, we achieved, we adapted and reused this, or we saved X amount of carbon emission by doing this. I think it's always useful to provide that information. It's obviously held in confidence, so don't worry about that, but it does help because it helps the jury to understand that from a design element as well. The other thing that always falls short is the financials. And I understand that it's sensitive, but again, it's something where it's important because we don't want to be awarding projects or programs that are unfeasible. Or that, do not financially stack. And I think that that's a really important element as well to, I guess, understand that they are held in confidence. And if the project is worthy of an Asia Pacific award, that, one of the things is that market acceptance, is that financial viability, or if you had some struggles, what did you do to adapt and be agile and address those challenges if there were financial challenges or something like that. One of the things that I look for with the terms of market acceptance is, again, looking at, for example, high density residential. What are the resales of those? So you may have sold, 99% off the plan, but what is the resale of those apartments now? Because to me, that's the true test of how successful a development is or not. But I would just encourage people to just think about what is the criteria asking you. Look at how diverse that criteria is, because we are so unique that we don't purely just look at it on design. We are looking at it based on a sort of an evidence-based in terms of data output and impact. And so we are looking for what are those key metrics. So if you can add as much of that in, as well as providing any documentation that can support what you're stating in the form, that's really helpful, because we will ask for it in that, once we announce shortlist, finalists will usually go and ask and say, you're missing, financials, is that available? Because again, it's such a prestigious award. We do not want to award a project that does not have that ability to do that. The only other thing I would point out as well is that there is the legacy award criteria. And often it's not a short form. I think it's just a misunderstanding, but it is more so the legacy award is for those projects that have been developed and operating for 25 years. So sometimes in the past, we've had applications that tick the legacy award as well as applying for the awards, but they've only been maybe constructed and finished in the last 12 months. So just so that everyone knows that legacy awards are very unique. We don't hand them out a lot. So we did get one for Australia last year, which I was very proud of. But I think it's important just to note that that is a very unique and special award for projects that have been developed and in operation for 25 years as well. That's the other little comment I would say there. Thanks, Chris.
Welcome. How about Chris? Like, what kind of evidence and data that Bell hasn't covered will strengthen a submission a lot more and maybe resonate personally with you and your background the most?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Belinda said earlier. I mean, I'm trained as an architect, so I'd love to see the plans and the sections and more objective data of really how the thing work spatially, because we're all property professionals, so spatial evidence is important, and then the financial numbers. Now it's in Asia Pacific, we span market economy to planned economies. So some of the projects are in planned economies. So, but still, those projects that are in planned economy, it is still very useful to show those government subsidies, how did this work within the whole urban economics system, ecology. I know even in Hong Kong, Hong Kong is supposedly the epitome of market economy, but virtually all of our more than 60% of our people live in public housing. So all those are actually built through government subsidies, and then within them, those public housing, there are shopping centers, but then the shopping centers are actually built by the government in the public housing. So what would be very, very useful for us is if entries could delineate exactly how the financial subsidies of that works, so that that shopping center could be built, and then how the private sector get involved in some of the shopping center development, for example. So as long as you can explain it, we're not looking for evidence that everything is financed by private sector. We just want to have or jurors would want to have a very clear ideas of how the financial ecology works in projects like that. Singapore, again, it shared quite similar situation, that government play a very, very big role. And of course, in China, mainland China, that is very much the case as well.
Talking about market acceptance and financials right now, like Chris, like maybe to both of you, like how do juries like evaluate the balance between commercial performance and social or environmental impact in these private or public sector projects in general, you think?
Well, definitely, we totally subscribe to the idea of the triple bottom line. So we environmental, social, economic. all three are important. And in fact, if a project that is financially successful, but then environmentally degrading and destroy environmental capital, then it would be highly unlikely that the jury would look at it favorably.
I think I would just also add, I agree with Chris on this. I would also add that, like, because we have projects from across the region, it's quite diverse in terms of the context in which a project sits within as well. So I think it's also helpful in the submissions, if you can, of providing a little bit of the locational context. Obviously, we have jury members from across the region for that purpose, but I think we also look at it in that lens, because some parts of the region are more progressive, for example, on community stakeholder engagement. That would most likely be Australia. But then there are other, like, for example, Singapore and Hong Kong, you know, like 60% of housing is government, you know, and that's not the situation in Australia. So again, like, I think just context as to what is the uniqueness of your project also in its local context, because while we're providing, you know, while we're assessing an award that is an Asia Pacific award, we also do deliberate as a jury about what is the significance or the uniqueness of the award in its local context as well. And I think that's important because we are so diverse when you compare, like, the Philippines with Singapore versus Hong Kong versus Sydney. It is so different. And so that is why we do sort of 8-9 hour jury days of deliberation, is because we have to look at them all generally in one day so that we can actually have those robust discussions. So I would just also add, if you can give some of that context as to why is your project also unique in your local context as well, is also very helpful for the jury members who may not be in that from that region or from that country as well. Thanks.
Okay, now to the audience, if you have a question, just type them into Q&A box. I'll sure to answer it later. Yeah, okay, and then we are going into, like, jury process and decision making. Yeah, maybe to Chris, like, how to site visits, like, or virtual site tours benefits to juries evaluation of a project, like, why is the entrance support is critical, and what should an entrance do to ensure this visit add meaningful value to the judging process in general?
Yes, site visit is of immense importance. So if you could allow the juror to walk around, ideally, give them some freedom. I think juries would love to just walk about, talk to people, in the neighborhood, allow them to feel the atmosphere. I think jury would totally appreciate that. Yes, getting them into a room, giving them a really impressive PowerPoint, fine, yeah, but I think that would only be, hopefully, just a small part of that site visit. Ideally, I think if you could give them the freedom of just talking to anyone they like, going into maybe the tenants or the cafes or the garden, the park, whatever the project is about, and then just talk to the people who are using it through serendipity. I think that would greatly improve the jurors' confidence that they have a full grasp of what that urban neighborhood or that urban project is about.
Mm-hmm. Belle, do you have anything you want to add about site visit?
Yeah, I think it's property development 101 is to do a site visit to get a feel of a place. I always say to my team, like, you got to get out into the field and really, you know, you can really tell whether a place works well or not by experiencing it. It's the user experience. But to Chris's point, of course, you know, talking to the everyday person, whether it's a staff member or a resident or just someone just going to the shops, it's their user experience too, without having the built environment professional lens on top. I would also say that we do receive projects, and I encourage you We do receive projects from locations where our jury members are not located, and I would just, and we have done virtual site visits, and I would just ask, it is obviously an incredible privilege to be a finalist, but also an award winner. And if you can assist us with trying to turn around those site visits as quick as possible, because we work in such a tight time frame, it's an intense little period for us where we do all the site visits in 2 or 3 weeks. But last year I had the joy of doing a virtual site tour of one of our award winners, which is Karma Lakelands. And, and I got a tour, it was in India, and I got a tour on the back of a golf buggy, and that, virtually, and it was lots of fun, and a very deserving award winner. But I think it's also just in understanding that we do understand that in some locations that, our jury members cannot get to certain places within the time constraints, and that's understandable. But if we can somehow arrange a virtual site tour, it's also just seeing a place in action as well. So it is a intense little period of trying to get those site visits, but I really do think it gives you a sense of again, like that market acceptance, that, how well has the project settled? And I've really emphasized of late about the awards, we really are about looking at how well has a project settled. Because, as an industry, we love to celebrate projects once they're finished and they're beautiful, then, we cut the red ribbon. But, it is a true test of excellence about once a project settles and how the community engages and embraces with a project. So, yeah. Thanks, Rose.
Welcome. Talking about the process, can you both share some examples of how smaller or lower budget projects successfully complete alongside with large and high profile development? Maybe Chris first.
Yeah, certainly. For example, last year we gave an award to a very small, extremely low budget neighborhood park in Bangladesh. The reason is that we're not really looking for a project of huge size per se. We're looking for projects that are innovative. And sometimes small projects could be highly innovative. And that particular one was really a bottom-up initiative by a few local planners and architects, then working with local businesses, and then they got the collaboration from the local government, and then they built a neighborhood park. While they were doing that, they also found an innovative way of capturing the water, the rainwater, and also resolve some of the flooding problem. So Julia thought it was a very, very good example of how people, small project, can show the way forward. And after that project, they also had subsequently several other projects, similar projects on the go. So it shows how it could be replicated in other parts of that socioeconomic context. So while exactly the same thing might not happen in some other cities in advanced economy, but it would be highly appropriate for other developing economies.
Well,
that was why we gave them an award. Yeah.
This is probably my favorite question of the
Okay,
webinar.
go ahead.
Only because a couple of years back, the project, it's a program that has most stayed with me, which is Good Life Makan in Singapore. And it's a very small program that is on the ground floor of a government residential building. And it was something where, again, it was a program, not a project, as in it wasn't a development. And it was done by not-for-profit called Montfort Care. And it really just showed we're in a loneliness epidemic, right, across the region, and we've got, people that are aging longer with seniors, and then you've got younger generation. How do you mix them together? And this project was simply activating that ground floor space. And it wasn't an expensive fit out, it wasn't anything fancy, but the principles and the success of the program was that it was able to encourage seniors to get out of their apartments, to engage with each other, to cook together. Like Singapore, makan is, food is such a big part of our culture in the region. But also about, being able to do things like gardening, play mahjong, like and just activating that space. And to me, like when I think of it in my local context of Sydney, we have so much empty ground floor spaces where people are not coming out and coming together as a community. And so again, it's a very small program, but so successful in the way that it was also, they also had a barista coffee where they were also selling coffee, and there's a local school down the road. So the children would walk home from school and pass by and see older people from the community, engage with them, do activities. Sometimes they would sell their arts and crafts and things like that. And so I just think that there are projects like that that are just as important to the shaping and of a community or of a city, as well as larger projects where we're talking, infrastructure or art galleries or museums or something like that. And that one, it really left its mark with me, that when I was in Singapore last, I actually went out of my way. I was there for a personal vacation, but I went out of my way to go see it and go experience it. And it was exactly how it read in its application, and I think just back to an earlier point about imagery, yes, imagery is great, but I think we also want to see maybe some photos or videos of not the final marketing videos or imagery, but also sort of what's that process of how you got there as well. So show us, be a little bit vulnerable, show us some photos of like what it was like to, do construction, or, did you do some stakeholder workshops to get that input to get it right? And like with Good Life Mackin, to Chris's point, they've subsequently done other programs. I know they did a workshop, like a woodwork tools workshop, mostly directed to older male seniors as well. But again, it's that principle of, we're in a loneliness epidemic. Here's a way of getting the community activated. Here's a way to, help seniors and get them out of their apartments and contribute. And I think that is just a great example of, it's not a big program or project, but it is one that is really having an impact to the community. Thanks.
Yeah,
Very
to further
intriguing.
encourage smaller projects. I think Jura really appreciates people who can overcome difficulties, to achieve something highly innovative. So it's not about ticking all the boxes. If you just kind of I've already ticked this box, and ticking all the boxes is not enough. But if there is a tiny project, but then the entry demonstrated that they make it happen against all odds and achieve something that has never been achieved before in that socioeconomic context, then the juror would really appreciate that kind of effort.
You both kind of touched it already, and I heard about like storytelling, how important it is. Like in both of your perspective, like what is a clear and compelling project narrative actually look like? Like particularly in demonstrating, as you mentioned, Chris, like innovation, and Belle talk about local context. Like, can you describe it to me a bit further? Like maybe Belle
Yeah,
first.
I
Oh,
think.
Chris, okay, go ahead. Chris,
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm sorry,
No,
Belinda, please go ahead. Yeah.
Chris, I'm happy for you to go, but look, I would just say no project is ever smooth sailing, right? So, we all know that there are challenges. There is never a project in my 20 odd years of doing this that is ever gone smooth. We always have to problems that we have to better. As I said earlier, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say, hey, but it's actually something that you should be proud of. It's something to say, this is what we did to overcome this problem or this challenge. I think as an industry, we crave like learning about thought leadership and learning from each other about how did we overcome that. That's also what we're looking for here, is to actually, as you mentioned earlier, Rose, in your introduction about, potentially also having thought leadership of the award winners, of sessions of saying, how did you overcome, this challenge? Or, how did you, achieve those carbon emissions? Or how did you refurbish an entire building instead of completely doing a knockdown rebuild and actually adaptively reuse a commercial building and convert it into residential? And what were the construction cost savings and things like that? We're looking for data. We're also looking for that story of how did you get there? Because we're all in the same boat. We're all facing, higher and higher construction costs. We're all facing, certain challenges with, sustainability and other issues. But I think we all want to actually see what actually can be done rather than the theory of discussing potential ideas, but actually looking at this is like when you see something in its physical final finished form, it actually is like gives you confidence to say, well, actually, I can apply this methodology or this approach or this mindset. And of course, you will come across your own hurdles when you do your own project. But the purpose of the awards is actually to celebrate those projects that have demonstrated true innovation by actually explaining, this is the problem that we face and this is how we overcame it. But by doing that, we achieved X, Y, Z, carbon savings or something like that. So it's back to Chris's point, about, the outputs and outcomes. But I think it really helps when you're telling that story to use data, the impact side. I mean, that is really what we're looking for. I will say, into the earlier question, I read the application form before I look at anything. I don't even look at the images or anything like that. I'm interested in impact. I'm interested in replicability. I'm interested in innovation. I'm not so much interested in pretty pictures because I'm not a design professional. Worry about that later. But it's something for me that I look at and I go, I want to be able to celebrate projects where there is something that is replicable and transferable for the region to then adopt or incorporate in their local context. And I think that's a really important point to consider is what can you share from your project and your learnings that other people, other developers in the region can also adopt or consider for their own challenges and projects. I'll pass it to Chris. Thanks.
Yeah.
I think narrative is very important. To be able to tell that story effectively is really the key to a good submission. But like what Belinda said, we actually want you to tell us as it is, very clearly, succinctly, in the right kind of order. So, in another word, it's prose. We want prose. When there is too much, maybe a little bit of poetry from down, but when there is too much rhetoric, then the jurors start getting a little bit suspicious. So go light on the rhetoric, and definitely when we see a lot of jingoism and hubris, then jurors positively get very suspicious. So prose. You just have to your narrative focus on writing very, very clear prose with a little bit of poetry and not too much rhetoric.
I see. Like going back to Val's point, talking about impact and commercially viable at the same time, like what kind of signal and evidence would when you're looking at these narratives, like is actually indicating their capability of being replicable or scaled in other settings? Because I heard the two projects, the smaller scale projects that you both mentioned in Singapore and Bangalore, like what exactly when you judge them, you feel like, oh, this is actually replicable. It is actually able to scale.
Yeah, one example would be how many, whether there are other places in the same socioeconomic context already starting, at least or in planning form, if not in already implemented. But there are other evidence. For example, in social circle, if this has already been included in professional handbooks or professional manual, or if you yourself is already publishing some menu that allow other people to replicate what you have done. So you're already sharing it through your publication online of kind of how to do this. Now, those would be very, very good evidence that this is something that you're sharing, and this is something that other people are learning from.
I would say for commercial like developments, so if talk residential for a second, obviously off the plan sales is always one measure of like, what is the success if you're still trying to sell, 40% of the stock. That could be problematic. As I said earlier, resale rates to me really matter. That really tells me how well a project has settled and market acceptance of the resale rate of it. Because, people may pay the off the plan price and then, not be able to get their money back or just break even. So I do query that in terms of market acceptance. When it comes to, say, commercial buildings or retail or industrial, looking at that in the sense of the lens of, occupancy and even there was one that was we had a robust discussion, I call it robust discussions, in Singapore about foot traffic of retail. So it's not even just about retail occupancy, but also like a lot of shopping centre owners will be able to tell you about pedestrian foot traffic and something like that as well. So it's not always because we sometimes we get asked the question of I think you asked it, Rose, earlier, about how do you compare like a commercial project versus one that pulls the heartstrings a little bit more, like something that's like affordable or social housing, versus an industrial warehouse. But I think because the criteria is broad in that we don't just look purely at design, we are looking at impact, innovation, sustainability, community. In terms of impact is only one element of the criteria. So we also understand that the way in which, because we're so diverse as built environment professionals, is that we're also looking at, we understand that, a city to function needs data centers, right? So we need that as part of we don't just need housing. We know we need waste infrastructure. We know we need, programs in order, putting a roof over someone's head is only one element, but also getting a community together, you need the programs, which is why we award both programs and projects. So I think that it's just important to think about the impact, but also in your context as well. And we know that, it's different for different sectors as well, when you could say for comparing industrial versus like affordable housing or something like that, or open space as well. But I think though, there is, to Chris's point, it's important to also, from a commercial viability or feasibility, tell us what the returns are if you've got those numbers. Like that's really important to know. How much did you save, or etc., or how much did you, I think that's a really important element. But to the earlier point Chris made about what government subsidies did you have, because that's also helpful as a leading not-for-profit real estate organization for us to then go, okay, in order to achieve a project that has such an positive impact to communities, we need government subsidies. Projects like this will not happen again without government support or government input or something like that. So I think, again, it's important to give that context. There's no shame to that, because some projects do not happen without government input or support. And the jury knows that, which is why if you don't disclose it, we'll probably ask the question because we know, probably just through our own sniff tests, that there was some type of government input or support. So we do have that context of looking at it in a more broader lens with those different criteria as well. Yeah.
To expand on Belinda, sorry.
Go ahead,
to expand
Chris.
on that a little bit, any longitudinal evidence would be most gratefully received. So before you open, after you open, or immediately after you open, versus, let's say, you've been open for 2 years. So the data for the last 2 years. So there are all kind of things. Footfalls, definitely one, but point of interest, for example, the kernel density of the point of interest around your project or within your project, connectivity, clustering effect, all these can be easily measured now through space index or SDNA type analysis. So you show how the clustering effect is happening longitudinally, kind of before you open, after you open, 2 years after you open. So any evidence of all of that to supplement. I know sometimes pure financial information might be a little bit sensitive. Some developer landlord might be reluctant to disclose. Now, but those metrics that I mentioned are proxy. They're not direct financial measurement, like connectivity, SDNA, connectivity, longitudinal numbers within your site. These things can be kind of easily obtained through information in the public domain.
Mm-hmm. Wow, time flies. We're at the last question already. So if you're able to give our future entrants one advice, would you give like starting their submission now for an early bird deadline? What would that be? So,
I would just say get your
Yeah,
get your skates on.
Treat this as a learning experience to learn more about your project. I think the process is not just to present it in the best light. Yeah, in fact, the jurors are very experienced, professional, so they can see through staged presentation. They can easily see through the rhetoric. So treat it as an experience to learn about how this project has been for the last few years, and currently and hopefully in the future would have an impact on the city, and how we could learn from your experience. I think that would be a very, very good way to entry, because if you entry in this way, then definitely whether you get any prize or whatever prize you get, you win.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
And Chris has put it really lovely, but I would also just say, like, take the time. You've got time now to go and source that data, source that information. But I think just think in the forefront of your mind, like, what is it that you want people to know about your project and how you got there and the process? And what are you most proud of? What is your legacy with this project to your community or to the region? And what is that you would like others to learn about? Because that to me is why I'm involved with this jury process for the last 3 years. And I think it's really special. You know, it is a really special, prestigious award where it is the region. It's a region award, and there's not many of them. I don't think there's many of them that are handed out in terms of, Asia Pacific region awards. And I think that just take the time, get your skates on. It's only the second or third week of January, so of 2026. So, but I think just take some time to think about who your audience is and what is the story? What is it that you want to get across about what makes your project unique, and how you think that others may learn from it with their own projects? Because I think often we always want to just celebrate it because it's beautifully designed. But I think that's what's unique about these awards, is about knowledge sharing. It's about thought leadership, about case studies, and being able to, as an industry, work together to sort of address the challenges that we're all faced in the region. Thanks, Rose.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Belinda. Thank you, Chris, for such a wonderful conversation and for sharing your insights so generously. I hope everyone listening today feels inspired to apply for the 2026 awards, and perhaps even encourage your colleagues and even your networks when you see like great excellence projects around you to get involved. So please help us spread the word and bring more bright minds into the awards this year. And now, audience, please show some of your love, hearts, thumbs up, claps, if you found today's webinar helpful. And let's give a big round of applause to our jury chairs, Belinda and Chris, for our time, wisdom, and continued support. And while those reactions are rolling in, I would like to invite our program manager, Kenil Chal, to share some important updates about the 2026 awards. So Kenil, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. And thank you once again to Belinda and Chris for such an informative session. I feel like a lot of our listeners and potential applicants who might view this at a later time will appreciate how much the importance of the competition itself and what impact it might have on the region. Now, a few reminders before we close the webinar. Registration period is ongoing until March 13, but right now we have a special early bird promo rate that you can enjoy, and we hope that you can take advantage of the highest discount that we can offer at the moment, which is 400 for public sector and nonprofit, and $700 for private sector. We'd also like to remind everyone that the discount is applied once the submission is finalized, not when the application is started. So the early bird deadline is on February 3, and we also have the regular deadline period, which will which you can enjoy a 500 and 900 fee respectively from Feb 4 up until February 26. Now, the last chance to register will be from Feb 27 to March 13. This is the last chance to register, and there's an additional fee here of 600 for public sector and nonprofit, and $1,100 for private sector. So once again, we'd like to remind you that the discount is applied once the submission is finalized, not when it begins. For more information, you may visit our website. You may find the registration portal there, submission guidelines, and the sample submission form. For any questions or if you require any assistance, you may reach out to Asia Pacific Awards at uli.org. And yes, we look forward to your submissions. The recording of this webinar will be made available on the website. So if you'd like to review some of the answers that were shared today, you may do so at a later time. Thank you, and we look forward to your submissions.
Thank you.